Members of the European Parliament, permanent representatives and ambassadors, Vice President of the European Economic and Social Committee, President of Eurochambres, President of the Federation of Belgian Chambers of Commerce, representatives of trade unions and employers' organizations, and other authorities, ladies and gentlemen. As General Director of New Economy International Forum, I am pleased to welcome you to this Forum Europa event, which we organize thanks to the essential contribution of 5 companies that demonstrate their strong commitment to Europe and its citizens every day. These are Airbus, International Airlines Group, IAG, Indra, Solaria, and Telefónica. As many of you know, we started our activities in Brussels earlier this year under the motto Ideas to Strengthen the Union in an inaugural conversation with the President of the European Parliament. Since then, we have continued to consolidate Forum Europa as a meeting point for the political, economic, and social spheres of the EU and its member states. Today, we would like to continue exchanging ideas to strengthen the Union, and for that we have the honor of welcoming Mr. Vladimír Dlouhý, President of Eurochambres, who will be introduced by Mr. René Brandes, President of the Federation of Belgian Chambers of Commerce. Thank you very much, Mr. Dlouhý, Mr. Brandes, and without further ado, Mr. Brandes, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much to be present on a grey morning, but it is in the fog that the solution is coming out. It will be a pleasure for me in a few minutes to introduce Mr. Vladimír Dlouhý, President of Eurochambres since March 2023, a man that has a lot of experience related to the economy, thanks to, of course, his political commitment, as he was the former minister of Czech Republic. It's also a mathematical gentleman that knows what means the figures in his way of his study and in his credential into mathematical economics and econometry. So a man that understands the figures. And very pragmatic, he was also president of the Chamber of Commerce of Czech Republic for more than 9 years. So we will have a word and a sharing, I would say, of someone that is next to the floor to the entrepreneurs. A little words about Eurochamber. Eurochamber is the cupola representing no less than 40,000 entrepreneurs among our member states, among 27 countries. That means an authorized voice of what is happening, what we face as challenge, as entrepreneur, I would say on our daily life, but especially today on the transition where a new commission is coming, where the world is changing, and when the tone of the new presidency given by the choice by the US citizens is giving, I would say, signals, questions, and probably challenges also to position ourselves on a real economy worldwide. In this field, indeed, Eurochamber is bridging the entrepreneurs from all the member states to the local policymaker at the regional, national, and of course, more than ever, at the European level. And at this way, we ended, as you know, and we start the new commissions with 2 strong signals, the report Draghi and the report Leta, on which for the report Leta, Eurochamber had contributed very actively. When we see the picture and the economical survey that Eurochamber is concluding somewhere from those questionnaires, I must say that if I take the picture of Belgium, we notice a structural problem. Talents are missing among the member states of the European space. In Belgium, we're speaking about my country, for 100 people that are going to retirement, we have only 84 students that are coming on the market. This gap, 16, if I can say that, has to be filled up somewhere. Artificial intelligence is one way to do it, and the Chinese are applying that since many years. But also, more than ever, education, attractivity of talents, innovation that are calling, I would say, fresh air and oxygen to our companies are the two pillars on which we will have to work. Somewhere also in my country, the cost of labor is jeopardizing, I would say, the development of my country. And I'm representative also of the Belgium enterprise in Belgium. End of the year, we will have again to discuss those increasing of salaries. That is really a problem for my country and for our entrepreneurs. Behind the scene, we have also the green transition, an opportunity, but also it must be feasible on economical costs. And in this field also, a problem that occurs very often are the permit to the entrepreneurs to make those investments for energy transition. But I will not develop more the scene. I think that you are here today to listen, challenge, good news, catching, I will say, insights, and going ahead with challenge, voice, advocacy, and solutions. Eurochamber is not there to claim. Eurochamber is there to act, decide, push, move, argue, and making from our economy a very strong and well-built economy as a key player on the world economy. I think that it is an opportunity, what is happening today in the US, because more than ever, we have to fix and set our DNA. And this DNA, the base to start, will be presented today. I give the floor to our president, Mr. Vladimír Dlouhý. You're welcome on board.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's meeting. Well, first of all, I must thank to René for his opening remarks and for his kind words. You explain what Eurochamber is much better than the president himself would be able to do. So thank you very much. And of course, I must thank very much to the New Economic Forum, President Rodriguez and his staff, who happens to be his son, if I'm not mistaken. So thank you very much for agreeing to host our event today. And it's a pleasure that Eurochamber can cooperate with you. And it's a pleasure for me personally to speak here today. Well, let me start, I can't do anything else, with the economic and political context. We have chosen a very interesting day, ladies and gentlemen. Second Trump presidency is here, with all the ensuing uncertainty, and despite it is a cliche, I'm going to repeat it. We must hope that this is going to be a wake-up call for Europe. Unfortunately, Europe had witnessed already many wake-up calls, and it seems to be slipping still. We are living in the time when Franco-German political and economic European engine is stalling. We live through the protracted war in Ukraine, when return to cheap energy is not in sight. And let's be frank, and we all know it already, that Europe is in its worst position relative to other regions of the world since late 1960s, since the end of the post-war economic miracle. Draghi's analysis on the shape of Europe's economy is brutally clear in this respect, but the reality seems sometimes to be even grimmer. So we are living through worrying times, both geopolitically, economically, and Europe's place in the global power rankings is slipping as our competitiveness declines. But it is also an interesting day because European parliamentary hearings for the candidate commissioners are going to be concluded tomorrow. By the way, let me make here a detour. I think it's outrageous how Europe can afford the situation when a year ago at the end of 2023 we were sleeping that this commission is already a lame duck because it's facing the elections. In the spring, nothing was able to achieve. because there were elections, then there were elections. Now we have a half of year before the Commission starts to work. The world is burning. The Europe's position is declining, but we take the luxury more than a year to do nothing. I think it's outrageous. But we are not here to discuss EU procedures. We are here to discuss what to do. Why is Europe lagging behind in so many areas? Why US is fighting problems with investments while Europe suffers with unnecessary complex regulatory framework that stifles entrepreneurship? Why, being a union built around the single market, which is the world's largest trading bloc, our businesses face so many barriers and obstacles that impede the functioning of the single market, as another Italian Prime Minister, former Prime Minister Enrico Letta, pointed out in another landmark report from earlier this year. So why our economic position on the global stage suffers from structural difficulties and national policies which too often are not coordinated each other? We are Eurochamber. Our members are primarily SMEs. Almost 26 million European small and medium-sized companies are the engine of the EU's industrial basis. They provide the growth, they provide the employment, they help to develop on the micro level the municipalities. And despite their contribution, their role is often underestimated, and their needs are not always considered enough by the policymakers, especially here in Brussels. That's why Eurochamber and its network of chambers of commerce and industry remains committed to our annual economic survey. It started already 32 years ago, and we are collecting the views of entrepreneurs across Europe. As René kindly described what Eurochamber is, I'm going to underline one thing which also has been mentioned, but Eurochamber covers not only the chambers from the EU member states, but also from many other countries affiliated or closely cooperating with EU, starting from Georgia and finishing in West Balkan, not speaking of Turkey as one of our most important members. If I should make general remarks, our Eurochamber Economic Survey for the year 2025. This survey, as always, is the annual qualitative survey of business expectations for the year ahead. This year we had about 42,000 replies from 27 European countries. It's a coincidence that 27, but there were not always the EU members. And as I said, the aim is to gauge business expectations for the year ahead and understand what the main challenges are. If I should describe the overall impression, the mood of our entrepreneurs is not positive. They are bracing for another challenging year in 25. And mainly, we speak about a high labor cost, persistent skill shortages, growing regulatory burden, and these are probably the three most important hindrances which they report to us. Main challenges to European business. The first message to be delivered has to do with the labor market. Labor cost and lack of skilled workers are ranked as the first top two challenges, and it's a recurring result in recent years. High labor costs, of course, reflect inflation adjustments and increases in employer social security contribution. We feel that already inflation has subsided. Yes, that's true, but everything got much higher on the price level and, of course, on the cost level. The second thing is lack of the skilled workers. And it reveals structural challenges, not the aggregate challenges. The unemployment, of course, is different in different European countries, but still, this is not an aggregate problem that would be here some substantial excess demand for labor. It's a structural problem, which we all know, we speak about it, but still businesses more and more perceive it as a big problem when particular companies in the particular sectors of the economy cannot find the proper people to employ. Especially, on the one hand, business struggle to hire experts who can deal with disruptive technologies. On the other hand, We all are facing very negative long-term demographic trends which call for the need to replace a retiring workforce both with high and low skill occupancies. So it's the first message: labor market, labor cost, and lack of skilled workers. The second message, despite it came only the third in the ranking of the problems, is probably the most striking result. This is the significant increase in the regulatory burden as a challenge. It's now in the top 3, while it ranked 4th in the last edition, but compared to other challenges, it is also the one that has shown the greatest year-on-year increase. This reflects growing concern within the business community about increasing regulatory requirements, especially related to the ESG requirements and the European Green Deal. Let me be clear. We understand that there is a need for the climate policies. We do not want to abandon the Green Deal, despite the fact, let's be again frank, from many of our countries, not speaking what we are going to see from behind the ocean, people start to speak about it. No, that's a nonsense. We all know that Europe needs a climate change policies. But at the same time, as already René has in a very diplomatic word stated, it must be feasible. Our entrepreneurs do not understand why Europe has the most aggressive targets when it is responsible for only between 7 to 9% of the global emissions of CO2. While we speak about leading by example, when other regions of the world, and America or the USA is going now to be the best example, don't care about our example, and they will not care about our example. We don't understand why, for instance, the corporate sustainability due diligence regulation will require for additional heavy reporting, which I speak with my own experience, the people do not understand, are not prepared to fulfill, and they will just either skip it or they will falsify it. Not speaking about the fact how this can be controlled at the end of the day. Again, let me reiterate for the third time. I'm not questioning the need for this type of policies. I'm not a politician nowadays, I represent the business. But I must give you a reflection of what the business thinks and what the business believes and what the business is afraid of. Third message, affordable access to energy and raw materials, which was a top concern of the past 3 consecutive years, now has moved to the 4th place. That seems that European companies appear to have adapted to the new energy prices, which of course, as I have already mentioned, are significantly higher than the pre-pandemic times. And of course, these prices have been normalized at the more elevated levels. But it is not so good news. Again, as it is clear that it happens on much higher cost levels as well. The 4th message, compared to the previous years, financing conditions are not among the top concerns for the European firms. However, high interest rates still negatively impact investment and economic growth, especially for the SMEs. But again, despite the fact that I tend to be the voice of the small and medium-scale business, many our members, our chambers on the national level, have also big companies as their members. Here I would like, more from the point of view of the lifelong economist than the president of Eurochambres only, I would very much like to support both Leta's and Draghi's conclusions. Leta's conclusions about the need of the deepening of the single market, and Draghi's conclusion about the capital market union. Leta speaks in different words, just to have a proper and much deeper capital market in Europe. It might be surprising when somebody who is criticizing very heavily Commission on one side, as a matter of fact, calls for the deeper European Union on the other side. But from the economic point of view, it's clear. Let's forget about the regulation. Let's cancel all those hindrances, but let's create a deeper single market and let's create a deeper capital market. Because again, when many of our members are the small and medium-scale enterprises or even startups, why most of the European startups, and we have very clever people in Europe, not that we don't have them. We have the same clever people as they are in the US, in China, or elsewhere. But why when such a startup raises to a certain level and then moves to the United States? Because there are much better access to the financing. There is a deeper capital market. They can go to many areas how to finance their future development. And they don't have it in Europe. So despite the fact that financing conditions are not among the top concerns from our 2025 survey, I believe still it's one of the huge issues. And the fifth, slightly better news, that the supply chain disruptions declined slightly compared to the last year. We have 5 key indexes: domestic sales, which basically reflect aggregate domestic demand. That means the demand for goods and services by household, demand for private investment, demand for public investment. And domestic sales continue to demonstrate a certain degree of resilience. Export sales, however, are set to suffer even more, and this survey is before Trump won the US presidency, because that would probably be even worse in terms of expectations, at least given the Trump rhetorics about the potential tariffs. Investment, the gloomy sentiment is clearly reflected in the levels of investment that business foresee for 2025, which are unfortunately set to worsen compared to the year 2024. The reduced propensity of businesses to invest comes from a widespread loss of confidence, combined with the geopolitical factors, combined with the continuous European decline, combined with the continuous regulation, etc. Unemployment is the next indicator. As I already described, tight labor conditions are heavily impacting the expectation on employment levels. Business owners are rather cautious about hiring new employees due to higher than usual social security expenses and inflation still impacting the adjustment of the wages. Not speaking about the structural mismatch, which I have already mentioned. And of course, then from that comes the final parameter, business confidence. This is what drives entrepreneurs' choices. And the confidence from our survey is basically flat, to some extent improved compared to the last year, but still is in the negative area compared to the average over our report since 2015. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is basically the overview of our report on our 2025 Eurochamber Entrepreneurs Survey. What does it mean for the EU agenda and the competitiveness? I think I have already hinted. We are at a tipping point for our business. What was the nature of our policies in the past? Regulate first, deal with the consequences later. And I would add, if the consequences are difficult, then we promise subsidies. This is the model which does not work, which will not work, and which will bring us, despite the fact that you are all, and we are all living here in the Brussels bubble, the situation is much worse than what we believe in the Brussels bubble. Boost financing and simplify regulation. Cut red tape and focus on the quality of legislation rather than quantity. Honor the 35% reporting reduction target for SMEs. I have never seen even that we would be coming closer to this goal, and eliminate barriers to the smoother, stronger single market. And work, and I know how difficult it is seeing reluctance on the national level, also to start to at least speak much seriously about deepening the capital market. Build a skilled workforce. Again, I know it's difficult. Again, I know that we must speak about our own problems within our chambers, because a lot of these problems are built on the national level. I admit that it's not everything bad only in Brussels. Many things are on our own level. Even our chambers should do better in helping to start a problem of upscaling and building a skilled workforce. Accelerate digital transformation. I purposely didn't mention much of the digital and AI because this is again a cliche and slogan which everybody repeats 10 times in his speeches. But yes, the digital transformation is very important. And a green transformation. If Mrs. von der Leyen really speaks about the fact that on one side she admits that Green Deal provides a lot of difficult regulation and reporting, at the same time we will plug in a lot of money into the investment into the green and progressive technologies, and this is going to help us to bridge the difficult period. Yes, do it. But you can plug even twice as much money as we envisage with the regulation and with the reporting as we have, with all the barriers to doing business. It will not help, and the money are going to disappear as they have disappeared in the Lisbon strategy in 2000, and unfortunately, I'm old enough to remember it in 2000, the Lisbon strategy. Or Europe 2020, again, I'm not so old enough to remember it, many of you still. And I definitely don't want to see today's strategies again to dissolve in the regulation disputes between the Commission and national levels and businesses only complaining. And let me close my introductory remarks. After all, I'm a former politician with a political remark. It's not only about Trump victory. It's about the results of the election in Austria, in Holland, after all in France. God knows what's going to happen in Germany, Slovakia, not speaking about Hungary. God knows what's going to happen next year in my own country. And people are voting in the direction which goes against Brussels. And we are here living in our bubble, sleeping and waiting for I don't know what. But still, we are here to help. We are here to fight on the business level. And I still believe, despite the rather gloomy results, that European business has a very strong basis. And Eurochambres is here to represent and help. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Dlouhý. As in previous events, the Q&A session will be moderated by Mr. Chris Burns, journalist, and you will have a few minutes after the Q&A for closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diego. Thank you. And please send in your questions. As legible as you can. That would be great. It would be very helpful. Vladimír, you helped to shepherd Czechoslovakia at the time to capitalism as finance minister, economy minister, right?
I never was finance, only economy minister.
Economy.
Václav Klaus was more happy he was a finance minister.
There you go. Okay. Could you foresee, I mean, after doing that, could you foresee where we are today? Could you have seen this development where the European economy is struggling at this point?
I'm getting this answer very often, so let me give this question very often. Let me give a usual short answer. If somebody, when I started 34 years ago in the spring of 1990, in that time Czechoslovakia as an economics minister, if somebody have told me that after 30 years my country will be a standard European country with the economic performance and economic level and standard of living even higher than a couple of other, that time, West European countries, it would be a country which made a big leap forward in development, infrastructure, competitiveness, standard of living. I would say that such a person, that time, I would consider him to be too optimistic. But if the same person told me in what shape the European economic and European policy would be after 30 years, that somebody like Donald Trump can become to be a US president, I would consider that person to be too pessimistic.
Okay. I have a question here. Could you please name 3 concrete EU-level instruments or measures needed to tackle the challenges of SMEs that they are facing right now?
Definitely first is the regulation. I know it's a slogan, but the devil is in the detail.
Okay,
And again,
can you give
it's
one,
not...
what's one regulation that you'd like to pinpoint on that?
Let me
Okay.
come to that. Before I defend a little bit the Commission, because we cannot say that everything is wrong only in the Commission. A lot of wrong things on the national levels, on the national government. But the short-term political points are more important than what the country needs. Let me pick up, and again, I'm not a specialist on the regulation. After all, I'm not in Commission. I'm not in the government. But what I know from my own experience as a president of Czech Chamber of Commerce, it's more and more reporting. You know, the Green Deal as such, decarbonization targets are difficult. Many people complain, but at least intuitively more and more people understand that this is necessary. But what people do not understand, and where I would start when I speak about the regulation, is the reporting problem. I have already mentioned corporate sustainability due diligence. So go back to the reporting. Don't flood the companies with a need of report on something they don't know how to do it. They might have even a criminal liability, and the small and medium-scale enterprises do not have means and finances for hiring the big four EYs and others to help them. So
Because there was- oh, that's
regulation,
one, right?
especially reporting, is the first thing.
Okay. Such as due diligence, you think that's a bit too extreme?
Let me, I suppose I'm in Brussels, that people know what corporate sustainability due diligence directive is. And that generates a whole plethora of new reporting. I even don't know whether people in the Commission who prepare it, European Parliament people who have, with the previous Parliament, who have created it, whether they know what kind of particular paperwork this generates. I doubt that they know. Second,
Okay.
labor market. Do something about the labor market. And again, it's not easy. And again, it has to do in the cooperation with, I'm so engaged in the market, labor market, I've almost fallen down from the stage. Do something with it, and especially it has to do with the educational system, I personally believe. I happened to have a lecture in a relatively small city in the Czech Republic, Žďár nad Sázovou, nobody knows. But it was interesting, it's one building which keeps inside gymnasium, which is the general secondary education, and the particular skills, cooks, waiters, how do you call these people who are doing sweets, etc., etc. And as a matter, I had a first lection to the vocational training students and then to the generalized students. I had a much better discussion with the first one, while I had a problem sometimes to understand the people from the second one. So let's concentrate. Maybe I'm here a little bit biased by representing SMEs, but do concentrate on the skills, on the vocational training, on really preparing the people for what is needed. I don't have anything against the general humanitarian education. But what we need are people who really, or young people who really know something. And help them, of course, to travel, force even the people who are studying so-called lower-level education for them to speak languages, allow them to travel, allow them to exchange the experiences. And the third thing, financing deeper capital market. That's something which I am very strongly. My Czech friends who believe that I betrayed their conservative feeling that I'm speaking about the deeper capital market because it's a federative concept of those federalists in Europe. I'm saying nonsense. I'm neither a federalist, neither a conservative. I just believe that we need less regulation, but in Europe, especially facing China and the US, we need deeper single market and we need deeper capital market. These three issues.
Okay. Next question, let's come back on skills here. The European economy lacks skilled workers. How is the situation, the German economy lacks skilled workers. How is the situation in other parts of Europe? And can we agree on a common position on this?
When I started as president of Czech Chamber of Commerce in 2014, 10 years ago, the German and especially the Austrian situation was given to me as an example. I was even criticized when you were almost a decade economics minister in the 90s. You destroyed the old communist vocational training. And look at the Austrians, look the Germans, how they good are. Now, after 10 years, the situation in our country is not better, and I hear that the Germans have problems as well. I, at least, with my CEO, Ben Butters, we traveled through Western Balkans 2 weeks ago. I traveled through many, many countries. This is a story, then the question is, how is it in other countries?
Yeah.
This is basically the same situation.
Yeah.
There is not an aggregate excess demand. I admit there are different countries with different level of unemployment in Europe, but overall there is not excess demand on the European labor market. There is a structural mismatch, and then there is a very strong demographic challenge, which of course goes back to what I also mentioned. This goes back to the ever-increasing demands of the social security payments by the entrepreneurs, which increases the cost and undermines the competition.
But on skills, it was interesting when in your talk that you made a bit of a mea culpa for your organization, that there's not enough effort being done from the business level on skills. And this is asking how do we get a common position on this? What should be the role of business and the role of government in improving those skills?
Again, I cannot speak as a professional for all the European countries. The old communist system was based on a system where the companies themselves, they have their own teaching, vocational training groups within themselves. They finance that. And of course, it was in the system of the center planning where everything has been different. But even in Austria, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm sorry that if somebody is here from Austria, I speak for Austria, but even in Austria, you have a system that many companies, when, for instance, a student in the second year of this skills school, he starts to be employed by the company, he works in that company, it creates a loyalty to the company, etc. If I go back to my Czech experience, but if I speak in Hungary, Poland, I don't know exactly in Germany, many countries, many enterprises which could do it, they don't do it because it increases their costs. They must finance it. They are always asking, well, we will do it, but then we need some easing in the tax payments. Then the finance minister says, no, we have a tight budget, we cannot allow that. And so it's a kind of a vicious circle. Mm-hmm. And that's why I believe that something should be done also on the company level. And companies are our members on the national chambers, so on the chamber level.
And maybe some sort of incentives, tax breaks for
yes, this is what I
to make
think
that happen.
Tax breaks, but many finance ministers do not love tax breaks these days, right. Especially after COVID.
Next question. What is the Eurochambres view on European champions? Do we need to pick winners?
We are representative of SMEs. I can say that if SMEs have a better conditions for business, they will be the biggest winner. This is more a question to me as an economist and somebody who has, have been, when after I left the government, René was kind enough to skip that in my CV. I worked for the two large global companies. One was ABB and later Rolls-Royce, and other was bad guys at Goldman Sachs, the US investment bank. I was with them for 25 years. And since then I learned that yes, we need champions. We need champions because because I want to see European single market. I am not calling for the political unification, but I believe that we should deepen our markets, and let me repeat ad nauseam, deepen our capital markets. That will indeed accelerate the potential of the more than 500 million people living on our territory. And if we have to achieve that, we should have strong national champions. But at the same time, we should have strong startups. And we should give them much better conditions. Because after all, as the US history shows, probably Chinese history shows, the champions also at some point were the startups. And this is where the future is going to be.
Okay. In addition to labor costs, what is the perception of the fiscal pressure at the level of taxation borne by companies, even by citizens, with direct effects on demand? question on taxation and what role should that play? What is your position on that?
Well, the Eurochamber position is the lower taxes, the better.
Oh, yeah.
Again, my economist position, and I'm an old conservative liberal species which does not belong to this world anymore. So I am the guy who has been breeded by Reagan-Thatcher dictum of balanced budget and not allowing much deeper indebtedness. And I'm still a little bit hesitating whether these people were not right. But now I'm reading in The Economist, in the Financial Times, even in my favorite Le Figaro, I read that the biggest problem of Germany is that they have a debt break, which means, by implication, that not only as a president of Eurochamber, but as an economist, I should probably allow for the lower taxes, even if it should mean increase of indebtedness of the European economy. I am not very much convinced about it. For instance, again, I apologize because I am Czech, so I know Czech situation best. I'm afraid that what my country faces is the increase of the taxes, basically because of the demography, because of the social security payments, and because of many other long-term trends. But the European position, of course, is the lower taxes, the better.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. Shortages of workers is identified in sectors such as construction, but in some countries also in tourism, agro-food, in very dynamic sectors. How can these shortages be solved?
Well, again, I begin to hear from different countries when now automotive industry in Germany, but by implication in a couple of other countries, facing problems, again in my country, Slovakia, in Hungary, in Germany itself, Austria. I don't know how exactly it is in France, but I haven't heard problems of this dimension there as I see in the automotive industry around Germany, that they are now laying off people, but there is no increase of unemployment, at least not in Central Europe. What the latest statistics show, that still the service sector is able to accept these people to much extent, even especially when they are the lower qualified people. And the lower qualified people are usually laid off first. So far, that means that I see that they are the sectors, including the tourism service, that at least in some countries still is taking people in. But this is going to be saturated sooner or later. And if indeed we have a problem with the most important sectors in Europe, like automotive, there will be a tendency for the increase of general unemployment over next year. That paradoxically, usually in the economic history, if you look back, the higher unemployment helps, despite the fact it's not very, from the human point of view, it's not very nice to say, but the higher unemployment also helps to solve the structural mismatch. So there will be some general trend if indeed there are some problems. To what extent we should do it proactively? That means how to attract more people to the sectors where they are needed. This is one of the most difficult issues of the national policies. Should that be again with the tax breaks? Should it be again with incentivizing from the wage point of view? Should they be earning subsidies in this respect? Well, more liberal-minded people, it is a process which begins with the educational system. The more people you push towards let's say, the technical schooling, the more people you will have available, and the more people will be employed in those sectors. But that's usually a long-distance run. That doesn't solve the situation immediately.
So you mentioned the auto industry, and I know that the auto industry is very important in the Czech Republic, and there are other countries also adjusting to the competition from Chinese electric vehicles and so forth. Volkswagen is in trouble. Audi's closing a factory, I believe, here. How is the Czech Republic dealing with that in adapting their auto industry to current times?
What happened? Well, let's be frank, my government is doing nothing. It lets the process to go ahead. I might have some hesitations about that. You are asking about Czech Republic. There is no direct impact, let's say, for the Škoda Volkswagen factory, because Volkswagen seems to be closing here or also in Germany, not Škoda. If I'm not mistaken, it's not doing anything in Spain in terms of SEAT. But where I begin to see, and people are complaining, are those sub-suppliers to the automotive industry. For instance, Friday when I was traveling to that part of the Czech Republic, to the smaller city, there were two the plastic materials company which deliver to the automotive. And they begin to see a big problem for two reasons. First, declining demand from their usual demand sources, but also increasing Chinese competition in their own area, in their own plastic industry, with the robotics and much cheaper equipment, not speaking about much cheaper labor costs.
Then let's take this to the European level. What about trade defense? I don't think you really talked much about that in your presentation. What is the position of Eurochambres on trade defense, which, especially with a new president coming in on the U.S. side, that is going to be engaging in trade defense?
Let me say again, I was against the European tariffs toward the Chinese electric vehicles.
Against?
Against.
Why?
Because I believe that the European automotive industry needs a pressure to adjust. It's a short answer. I'm not saying that this is a position of Eurochambres. After all, we are SME, so we have a certain luxury not to have 100% clear position in this respect. But Chris, you were at the Globsec conference in Prague. I was on a Globsec conference ensuing in High Tatras a couple of weeks after that. And I was there on a panel with BMW person and with a couple of other people. And even BMW person was against the tariffs vis-à-vis the Chinese electric vehicle because of the same reason.
Yeah.
And of course, it was not said loudly. He was also afraid of the Chinese retaliation.
Well, there's that too. Exactly.
But
right.
I don't know. You know, Trump's rhetoric is one thing, and Trump's policy would be probably the other thing. Despite the fact that he's rattling the arms, saying that now everything what he has said is going to be true, and looking at his personal nominations over past few days, it looks like that he indeed is selecting the political hawks. So we will see, but I don't think that he will impose a general 20% tariff for the European exports. I don't think so.
Okay.
I might be wrong, of course.
We'll see what happens. Right.
Let's see what
Exactly. Because he imposed tariffs during his first administration against Europe.
But now his rhetoric is now much more aggressive than what characterized his first presidency.
Right. Keep your questions coming in. We have a few more minutes. I've got a few more questions here. But on the auto industry, back to the auto industry, the European Union wants to phase out gasoline vehicles by 2035. There has been a push to loosen that. Do you think that's a wise thing, to loosen it? Or is it important to stick to that, to force the industry to adapt?
There is a new political movement in my country which is called, vaguely translated, motorists to themselves. And they made it to the European Parliament with their president of that movement, and now it's already a formal institutionalized political party, Mr. Filip Turek, happened to be flying with me yesterday here because I understand there was a public holiday, so all the MEPs were flying last night. And that gentleman speaks that there has only one argument in his political program. Let's postpone 2035 much further, or let's abolish it. Let's allow the non-electric engines to continue freely.
So did you agree with him?
Well, let me finish first. He got about 10% of the votes to the European Parliament, and he and his second person are now members of the European Parliament. And the magic is that he doesn't say anything else. He doesn't say anything about economics, taxes, politics, trade, nothing.
Just that.
Just that. And he got that 10%. I believe it will be phased out. Point. It's
Yep.
not Eurochamber position.
That deadline will be phased out
Yeah.
for 2035 to
Don't
stop
ask me.
building, right? Right. Do you think that's wise? Do you think that's a wise thing to do?
Let me reiterate what I have said. The world is not listening what Europe is doing. The world does not care. I have an Indian client in Hyderabad and Mumbai since 2007. I'm traveling there not very often now. I'm subsiding to working with them. But I have been there very, very often in these two cities, but also to New Delhi, Chennai, etc. They don't care what we are saying. And we are responsible only, let's say on average, 8% of global emission of CO2. Even if we do our best, there will be the floods in northern Bohemia, in Valencia. There will not be snow enough to ski in the winter, which I personally very much regret. There will be unbearable hot in the Mediterranean, which again I regret because I love to go to the sea in summer. Even if we fulfill our all aggressive targets, there will not be much change unless other parts of the world join us. And if we are saying that we are leading by example, that's a mistake. They don't care about us.
You made a point during your talk saying that this is a tipping point for our business, our businesses. What do you mean by that?
Because that's linked to both economic and political consequences. And again, I apologize, Ben will not be very happy with me that I'm politicizing very much in my speech because we are not a political institution. First, indeed, even take it from the aggregate figures. Again, Draghi said it, I have other numbers. In 2007, European economy, EU economy, including Great Britain, was slightly higher than the US economy on the aggregate level. 14 years after 2022, EU plus UK, which in the meantime went through Brexit, but EU plus UK, were only about 66, 67% of the US economy. Over 14 years, we have fallen from being slightly higher to only 2/3 of the American economy. And still the Americans have their own internal problem. And this is the tipping point also for the small and medium-scale business. We are losing the competitiveness. And if we don't do over the next 5 years something indeed very serious, we will be lagging behind probably for, I don't want to say forever, I'm 71 plus, so my horizon is relatively short. But I have a second grandson who is 10 months old, and for him I wouldn't like to see that he's living in a Europe which is lagging behind forever. And I am afraid that this is the danger.
You got plenty of more time to make a mark. There's going to be a president who's turning 80 soon in the U.S. So,
But my grandson has the advantage. He has a Czech father, American mother, and was born in London. In his 5 months, he got 3 passports, so maybe he will make it. But not everybody is happy as he is.
What about, and I know this survey was done before the election, but what about the new leadership we have after the latest parliament elections and the new leadership in the commission? Can they take on this new administration that's coming in Washington? How optimistic are you?
In what sense?
In facing what the Trump administration is going to do?
I would never vote for Trump. But if Harris won, I don't know whether I wouldn't certainly celebrate. I'm happy I was not American before the elections, because at the end of communism, I said it is a citizen's duty to go to vote, but if I was an American, I wouldn't know who to vote for. I hate the way how Trump is doing the politics. That's something which doesn't fit into my head. But in particular details, he's bloodily often right. And that's the issue. And now we will see what's going to happen with the administration. You know, I learned from the communist times, with all the hate speeches between Soviet Union and the Americans, always the better relations were between the communist governments and the Republicans. Maybe now, when everybody's now clear whom we are facing. We know we will have to adjust. Let's take it as a reality and let's see. I'm not very optimistic, but this is it. We will have him, or we will have them, and we will have to handle.
Okay. We're aware of this, the hearings today for the executive vice presidents of the European Commission. The hearing of the new vice president for climate change and competence, the Spanish candidate minister of the environment and climate change, Mrs. Rivera. What is the position of Eurochambre? She has been a radical against nuclear and not so active in the something crisis. Anyway.
That's the lady who previously was in the Spanish government when I took part at the lunch of the ministers responsible for energy sector, right? That's the Spanish lady. She was probably there, yeah.
Okay.
Well, that was my only one personal. In a private conversation, I learned that she's a fan of Atletico Madrid. She's a socialist. I never voted for the socialists, but that's fine.
Okay.
And she seemed to me to be, from just doing politics, doing her job, she seemed to me to be very experienced. I didn't realize she was very actively anti-nuclear, which I simply considered to be a big mistake and failure. And I hope that given the circumstances, if she is approved, she will change her mind.
Okay, next question is the likely coming increase in defense spending because of the uncertainty due to Trump an opportunity for Europe to deal with the rising social security costs. I guess what they mean is more tax revenue for that, right?
Well, it's difficult to say, but it's tragic facing the war in Ukraine and the human suffering there. But we all know from the history that if there is a strong incentive, strong push from the government towards spending in the defense industry sector, it has a short-term positive economic impact and a growth impact. If there is a short-term positive, and I'm not questioning the ethical and moral side of that, I'm just saying that this is what history teaches us, and I expect the same to be true. There is a simple multiplier going through the economy. And if there is a stronger growth, then there will be more space to pay the higher social security contributions.
Right. Let's pitch this forward. In 5 years, if we come back here in 5 years, what are the chances we have responded to the warnings of Letta and Draghi in their reports? This says, why will we have failed? So they're not being very optimistic. Are you?
I don't know. Again, the history teaches us that the future is very uncertain. Let me remind you again about Europe 2020 and the famous or infamous Lisbon strategy, which in 2000 said that in 2010 Europe is going to be most efficient, most productive, and the most competitive economy in the world. Unfortunately, 2010 we were in a different situation, and we are even worse. If I should take it from here, I couldn't have been I cannot be very optimistic what's going to happen after 5 years. But because I'm afraid that we are coming to the end, I don't want to close up on such a very pessimistic note. No, but come on.
Yeah,
I'm
that's true,
seriously,
yeah.
even because of my two grandsons, I don't want to end up in such a pessimistic note. But it very much depends whether we are going to be able to overcome the short-term views, both among the politicians, and again, let's be frank, among the businesses sometimes, and whether we will be able to embark on the longer-term strategy of changes.
Doesn't it, maybe it gives a little bit of optimism that Letta on the left, Draghi on the right, that there is a consensus, it might indicate a consensus to make those changes.
Yes, as in America, we are abandoning the standard left and right division. There seems to be a kind of a common wisdom. But the issue is to what extent common wisdom can prevail, or whether we will fall deeper and deeper into the trap which will be sorted out by the populistic movements and voters vote for the populists.
Let's see, final question. What's your opinion on of the entrepreneurs are self-employed in the, gosh, I'm having trouble reading this.
That's fine.
I think
self-employed
I can't
entrepreneur
get,
as well.
yeah, I have to maybe save this for next time. But Vladimir, stay where you are, because we have a couple of comments first from Antonio Pimentel, head of EU Affairs at International Airlines Group. That's one of our sponsors, IAG. Antonio, por favor.
Thank you, Chris. Dear President, dear Vladimir, on behalf of the sponsors, thank you very much for addressing us today. I hope that the reference that you made to Teresa Rivera, she's a supporter of Atletico Madrid, is because you think that's a good thing. I am a supporter of Atletico Madrid. So. But I wanted to echo your words when you were confirmed as president of Eurochambres. You said that businesses need favorable and predictable framework conditions to operate in Europe and be internationally competitive. And I think that's key, because this decline in competitiveness that you have mentioned, linked with the regulatory burden that we suffer, I think that's a common thing between SMEs and big companies. So there is a lot to do in Europe, but I think we have, and you have referred to that as well, we have good recommendations from Letta and from Draghi. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you.
And perhaps a final word, Vladimir?
Well, nothing to add. Maybe what we have heard just now, that Eurochamber is representing small and medium-scale business. Yeah, I think you had here my friend, the president of the Business Europe recently, if I'm not mistaken. We are on the same boat. Sometimes, of course, SMEs have slightly different priorities. Big businesses have different priorities. But if I should give some Brussels-based closing remark, we should work more together, including the European Roundtable for Industrialists, because we begin to face the same type of the problem. So to conclude, once again, Señor Rodriguez, muchas gracias. Thank you very much for organizing. Thank you to all of you that you came to listen to the presentation of our survey. And be sure in a year's time we are here with a new survey again. Hopefully, we will see the trends a little bit to improve. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vladimir. Thank you. And thanks to you all for your questions, and to our sponsors for supporting us. And keep in mind, #Forum Europa for anything you heard today. Please pass the word. See you next time. Thanks.